Recently, videos from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, showed Chinese people being beaten by locals. Many of the locals appeared very emotional. Another video from earlier this year shows two Chinese individuals in the DRC with their hands tied to a rack, left under the sun while being watched and insulted by local onlookers. Why are Chinese people being treated this way in the DRC? What happened? According to Reuters, on December 20th, during a press conference in Bukavu, South Kivu, a conflict-prone province in the DRC, the government announced that 17 Chinese men were arrested for allegedly operating illegal gold mines. These individuals were seated in chairs, not tied up, and did not speak to reporters. Bernard Muhindo, the finance minister and acting minister of mines, stated that on the 19th, a government delegation conducted an unannounced visit to a mining site in Karhembo village, leading to the arrests. Muhindo explained that the Chinese men did not provide any company documents or certificates. He added that there were about 60 Chinese people at the site. Officials detained 17 individuals who appeared to be in charge, along with some people from the DRC and neighboring Burundi. The Chinese embassy in Kinshasa did not immediately respond to Reuters' request for comment. The Burundian embassy said it was waiting for more information from the Chinese representative in Bukavu. An article by the Business and Human Rights Resource Center, published on November 26 this year, stated that under DRC mining laws, foreigners are prohibited from engaging in artisanal mining. However, Chinese companies bypass this ban by partnering with local cooperatives, avoiding federal taxes. There is growing discontent among the Congolese people and government over Chinese gold companies operating illegally in the eastern region. Allegedly, they damage the environment and violate the rights of African miners. The large-scale mining activities by Chinese companies have caused environmental destruction, with toxic chemicals like cyanide and mercury polluting local water sources. The article noted that gold production in South Kivu surged from 42 kilograms in 2022 to over 5,000 kilograms in 2023, accounting for about one-sixth of the country's official production. However, the total amount of gold exported from the DRC is consistently underreported, as several tons are smuggled through neighboring eastern countries into the global supply chain. Hundreds of foreign companies mine gold in South Kivu, with most of them being Chinese. Local authorities say that these companies operate without licenses, fail to report profits, and often use armed guards to keep government officials and journalists away. On July 3rd this year, a militia group in the DRC attacked a gold mine in the northeast, killing 6 Chinese miners and 2 Congolese soldiers. According to the Associated Press, Jean-Robert Basiloko, a member of the local civil society group, said the attack targeted the village of Gambala in Ituri province and the nearby Camp Blanquette gold mine. The militia group Codeco, standing for Cooperative of the Development of Congo, claimed responsibility for the attack. The eastern region of the DRC is rich in mineral resources. For about a decade, government forces have been engaged in ongoing battles with over 120 armed groups, and the conflict has escalated in recent months. In the fight for control over gold mines and other resources, militia groups in the region frequently launch violent attacks, including bombing civilians. In 2021, the DRC joined China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. In recent years, conflicts between local communities and Chinese mining companies over gold extraction have become more frequent. Several Chinese citizens have been killed in the DRC during these disputes. Local residents accuse Chinese mining operations of threatening their security, and protests have continued. In response to the repeated killings of Chinese citizens in the DRC, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has consistently issued strong condemnations, a standard response for the past decade. While China's exploitation of mineral resources in the DRC under the Belt and Road Initiative draws attention for disregarding the safety of its citizens, China has also made notable moves in Kenya. Recently, the Chinese embassy in Kenya invited around 70 journalists and editors from Kenya's national broadcaster to participate in training sessions, describing the goal as promoting professionalism and integrity in journalism. According to Voice of America on the 16th, media advocates see this as ironic because in the 2024 Global Press Freedom Index, China ranks 172 out of 180 countries. China also holds the record for imprisoning the most journalists globally and enforces some of the strictest media censorship laws. This is not the first time China has influenced African journalists under the guise of training. A researcher at the National Endowment for Democracy explained that the Chinese government invites African journalists to China for training, which often results in these journalists returning to write favorably about China. He said, when these journalists visit China, they are taught Chinese perspectives, such as the idea that China's media presence in Africa is helping Africa. African journalists end up being influenced by Chinese ideology. Brett Schaefer, a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund in Washington and an expert on Chinese media influence, noted that China applies the same strategy not only in Africa but also in Latin America. He said, China is attempting to build relationships with journalists from the global south. Schaefer highlighted a clear difference between China's approach and that of Western countries like the US and those in Europe. He said, compared to the journalist training provided by the EU member states or the United States, which have independent and journalistic traditions and VPNs, this ulterior motive is even more obvious. It's obvious that China does not want to train independent and high-quality journalists. What they hope to achieve from this is to more actively promote China at all levels and local levels in Africa. He added that he has seen examples where Chinese narratives are reproduced almost verbatim by African media outlets. One tactic is to influence the journalists themselves to make their reporting more favorable to China. Another is to find ways to publish Chinese information directly to these websites and media. In this way, the Chinese perspective is shared through trusted local journalists and local news media. Observers have noted that over the past decade, China has provided substantial loans to African countries for infrastructure development, making Africa a focal point of the BRI. However, this has also pushed many nations into China's debt trap, including Kenya. Reports indicate that Kenya borrowed $4.7 billion from China to build the BRI's Mombasa-Nairobi Railway. 5 years after its completion, the project has not brought prosperity to the country, but has instead contributed to mounting debt and widespread corruption. Some Kenyan media outlets continue to praise Nairobi Railway and the Belt and Road Initiative. According to a report by Chinese state media CCTV in September, Bernard Momanyi, the editor-in-chief of Kenya's influential Capital FM, wrote in the My China Story essay contest that the railway benefits the public by providing convenience and driving economic growth along its route. He described China as a good role model and stated that Kenya should follow China's path. The report mentioned that Momanyi visited China twice at the invitation of the Chinese government. His brother also received a Chinese government scholarship, studied in China, and later found a satisfactory job there. In September, during the 9th Forum on China-Africa Cooperation held in Beijing, Chinese leader Xi Jinping announced that China would provide $360 billion in funding to African countries over the next 3 years. This includes loans, aid, and investments by Chinese enterprises. During the summit, Xi met with Kenyan President William Ruto. Several bilateral cooperation agreements on financing and infrastructure were signed. According to China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kenya is regarded as an important economic and trade partner and a demonstration country for production capacity cooperation in Africa. Kenya is China's largest trade partner in East Africa, while China is Kenya's largest trading partner and source of imports. Observers note that Xi Jinping, often criticized by Chinese citizens for ignoring domestic issues while recklessly spending abroad, does not extend these funds purely for Africa's benefit. The goal is not to enhance journalistic professionalism, but to ensure African media favorably portrays China, ultimately turning them into part of China's propaganda machinery. This aligns with China's broader United Front strategy. China not only spends heavily in Africa, but also attracts African students to study in China, offering them privileges beyond what Chinese citizens receive. One African female student shared her experience in China. Do you receive a 2,500 yuan scholarship every month? Yes, we receive a full scholarship, which includes accommodation and tuition. The 2,500 yuan is for living expenses. So you don't have to pay for anything and you still get 2,500 yuan every month? Yes. That's amazing. So you save the scholarship money and use it to travel to other countries? Yes, that's right. I visited 17 countries. In Europe, I went to Sweden. After watching the video, many netizens flooded the comment section with criticism. Why are foreigners always given better treatment than our own citizens? Over 900 million people in China have a monthly disposable income of less than 2,000 yuan. Another commented, under Xi Jinping's great leadership, China provides massive aid to Africa every year and brings in large numbers of African students. To prevent them from feeling bored, they're even provided with attractive female students as companions, with generous stipends. Yet somehow, many Africans still resent Chinese people. Why is that? One comment criticized the government's policy of providing extensive aid to Africa while hosting many African students in China, suggesting that female students are often assigned as companions to ensure that African students don't feel lonely. However, the commenter questioned why African people still harbor resentment towards Chinese individuals despite these privileges. The reference to companions relates to a scandal at Shandong University in 2019. A former female companion wrote an article revealing that she initially volunteered to accompany African students to receive financial aid from the university and reduce her family's economic burden. After being accepted, her role involved spending time with a Congolese student. The article described how their relationship began amicably but deteriorated after a weekend party where some African students behaved inappropriately. If a companion refused to attend such events, African students would file complaints of racism or disrespect with the university. Such complaints often led to deductions in the companion's stipend or academic penalties. Reports revealed that during one gathering, over 20 African students were paired with Chinese female companions. These companions were typically selected from financially struggling families and were chosen for their appearance. At gatherings, many female students were pressured to drink, even if they didn't usually consume alcohol. One female companion was slapped by an African student in front of others after refusing to drink. Outraged, the companion tried to leave the room with the assaulted student, but the African student she was paired with blocked her aggressively. The struggle ensued until restaurant staff and the manager intervened, allowing the two female students to leave. The article noted that neither the assaulted student nor her friend received the school's financial aid that year. Meanwhile, several other companions reportedly had abortions months later, something widely known on campus. Resistance was futile, as the university clearly sided with the foreign students. The article concluded with, in the end, the fact that we graduated safely was only because the school turned a blind eye. This scandal caused an uproar, exposing the murky reasons behind China's large-scale recruitment of African students and the ulterior motives of the Chinese government. Some commenters speculated that African students in China enjoy such privileges because many are the children or relatives of African elites and officials, not ordinary citizens. The common people in Africa have no chance of getting these opportunities, so they envy and resent the privileged students, but they can't direct their anger at their own leaders, so they resent China instead. The Chinese government's preferential treatment and underhanded tactics to attract African students align with its United Front strategy. The goal is to brainwash these students and grant them special privileges so that upon returning home, they serve as China's propaganda tools. In late July, a Chinese blogger launched a poll on Toutiao. The poll was titled, "Who Cares About the Happiness of Chinese People?" The options were the Chinese government and the U.S. government. Out of 2,587 participants, 2,340 voted for the U.S. government, while only 251 voted for the Chinese government. The poll was quickly taken down, and the blogger's account was deleted, likely because the results were too embarrassing for Chinese authorities. This sparked heated discussions on X. Some users remarked, this result strikes at the heart of the Communist Party's image. They claim to serve the people, yet they've lost the trust and support of the public. Others joked that the Chinese government only cares about organ transplant matches, or that they are most concerned with African countries. Mr. Zhao, a Chinese citizen, commented, the Chinese government harms its own people by squandering taxpayers' money to fund African students. I once saw a video of an African student enjoying a feast, saying he couldn't even spend all the money China gave him. Meanwhile, Chinese students are struggling. How is this not betrayal? Zhang Junjie, a Chinese history student who is studying in the U.S., said, the Chinese government has lost the hearts of its people. Citizens know that the government doesn't care about their lives, rights, or dignity. Most Chinese people are aware of the issues and hope for change in society. On December 20th, a Chinese netizen shared a video of a father mock interviewing his young daughter, sarcastically criticizing the government's lavish spending in Africa.
采访一个问题啊，
说
If I don't spend the money I earn on you, your brother, or your sister, and I don't give any to your mom, how would you feel?
Why wouldn't you give it to us? Are you going to give it to Grandma and Grandpa?
No, I'm donating it to kids in Africa.
Well, don't they have parents? Why are you giving it to them?
They do.
Then are their dads like you, ignoring their own kids? You won't take care of your own wife and children, but you're raising someone else's? What's wrong with you? What's the point of having you around? As they say, from the mouths of babes. In present-day China, Xi Jinping resembles the emperor with no clothes, blind to reality while believing he is guiding the world. If laughter from a child can bring down a palace, then that palace was destined to fall. Even if children understand this simple truth, yet the Chinese Communist Party cannot, it signals that their downfall may not be far away.